Since Chris isn't here, we're ready to go. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is November 25th, 2019, and the time is 6 o'clock. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and minutes will be prepared. In respect to all the parties, we ask those present turn off cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to complete the attendance sheet on the front table, sign in. I would like to take a moment to review the procedures that the Commission will follow tonight. First, the Commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The Planning and Zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff's recommendation. Any letters or other communications received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record. All the interested parties will be heard, but reputations comments should be avoided. Repetitious or argumentative comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Therefore, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless they asked for by the Commission. The Commission shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the Commission. The Commission will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the request application. Any Commission member who has an ex parte communicant to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation and the respective agenda items. Is that it? Okay. With that, so if there's any citizens here regarding a non-agenda item to be heard, need to approve the minutes from the, obviously there isn't, so need to approve the minutes from the previous.
Do you have any discussion on them at all, on the minutes? If not,
Okay.
make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Okay. Okay.
And I can
You
go ahead
gonna-
and read
Okay.
agenda item number 3. Okay, this agenda item number 3, just for some background, Calvin and Rebecca Christensen, former property owners at 6801 Morningside Avenue in Sioux City, in the Agricultural State Zoning District, originally applied for and received a conditional use permit known as Board of Adjustment Resolution number 318 from the board on September 9th, 2010 to operate a dog kennel daycare known as Morningside Happy Tales. Presently, their daughter and son-in-law, Jessica and Benjamin Watson, are operating the business, and they request for the boards to consider them to increase the number of animals allowed on the premises from a 50 that was set by the original Adjustment Resolution 280. And basically, what we've done is presented within your packet the original resolution that was presented in 2010, which is all inclusive of what their business has been through the number of years. And basically, the facts of the case are that they're expanding their facility. So basically, they need to gain some more square footage. But they were able to have the building permit approved, but the use would have to have board oversight. And so that's why the usage has been brought to the Zoning Commission and Board of Adjustment for the specific purpose of allowing further use of more animals on the premises. And just for clarification, the formal public hearing, this is reviewed by the Zoning Commission. The public hearing will be held at the Board of Adjustment level on December 2nd, Monday, December 2nd at 6 o'clock p.m. And as with all conditional use cases, the property owners within 600 feet have received a mailing based off a certified abstractor's listing. We have notified various agencies and stakeholders which are listed in your packet, and have provided written statements from the Woodbury County county engineer, as well as the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. And basically, we went through all the criteria which would be considered by the Zoning Commission, beginning on page 9 of your packet. And what you see there is the applicant's response to the conditional use permit application questions. And so we went through each of the criteria and have found that them basically operating under their existing business model, and then of course increasing the number of animals. The staff recommendation basically is that for approval.
You haven't had any other comments come in?
We have not had any additional comments since the printing of the packet.
Do we need to read through all these criterias?
It could be helpful, and I can point those out too. Basically, the first criteria, the conditional use requested is authorized as a conditional use in the zoning district within which the property is located, and that any specific conditions, standards described as part of that authorization have been satisfied. And basically, the applicants said, we, Morningside Happy Tales, are maintaining our business in an adequate manner. The proposed use will be run in the same manner as it is now. However, with added space, the growing need for our business and our perfect location, we have the opportunity to fulfill the needs of our clients. And the staff says the existing Board of Adjustment resolution adopted in 2010 currently authorizes the property owners to operate this animal kennel business. The conditional use permit is specifically to allow the property owners to increase the number of animals serviced from 50 to 80. Under criteria number 2, the proposed use and development will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance and goals, objectives, and standards of the county's general plan. The applicant stated the proposed use will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent because we will not be changing our business practices in any way. We are only asking to increase the maximum allowed number of dogs because the growth we have experienced in the past few years and the length of our waiting list, weekends, holidays, and summers explains the need. The staff analysis is the applicant's request appears to be in harmony with the intent of the ordinance and the general plan. The Woodbury County General Plan adopted in 2005 presents the economic initiative to support existing growing businesses in Woodbury County. The goal of expanding this business venture appears to meet the criteria. As indicated in criteria 1, the applicant has operated this business under the general guidelines of Board of Adjustment Resolution 318. Since that time of inception, there does not appear to be any major complaints on file in the Office of Community and Economic Development. The third criteria is the proposed use and development will not have a substantial undue adverse effect on adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, utility facilities, and other factors affecting public safety and general welfare. The applicants responded, the proposed use will not affect these items due to the following. We maintain a septic system on the property, utilities will be updated and sized accordingly, and we have our own parking lot and driveway into the property. The traffic will not be affected because our customers come at random times during the day, making traffic issues almost non-existent. Adjacent properties will not be affected because our property and business is well maintained, and we offer a service to our neighbors that all can benefit from. The maintenance of the property is something we take great pride in. Our fences and security protocols exceed the state of Iowa standards, and we have never had an infraction from inspections performed by the state. Staff analysis is, as stated in the original conditional use permit proceedings, this parcel is within a mixed-use, zoned multi-jurisdictional neighborhood. Nearby uses within 1 mile are residential and mixture of general commercial uses, including a vet office, cemetery, funeral home, crematorium, golf course. Residential uses are adjacent to the north and south. Commercial uses are adjacent to the east and west. Woodbury County's Heritage Place Addition subdivision is south of the property, approximately 425 feet. Criteria number 4, the proposed use and development will be located, designed, constructed, and operated in a manner that will be compatible with the immediate neighborhood and not interfere with the orderly use, development, and improvement of surrounding property. The applicant stated the proposed use and development will not have any change because it will maintain the same aesthetic appeal and be operated in the same manner as it is now. Because we are adding on to our current building, the design will remain the same. The construction is such that it will cancel excess noise and have no impact on surrounding properties. First impressions are important to our business. Because of this, our current buildings, in addition, we are proposing maintain an aesthetic appeal which would not interfere with the surrounding property values. Staff analysis, all criteria, including criteria 4, were previously considered by the Zoning Commission and Board of Adjustment in the original conditional use proceedings. Under BA Resolution 318, the property owners are obligated to maintain their business sensitive to the residential characteristics of the neighborhood, including being responsive to the alleviation of any nuisance complaints. This parameter must be maintained. Anecdotally, an increase in animals may increase noise decibels, intensify the probability of a nuisance complaints. However, with an enclosed facility and a prudent planning process for daily animal care, the property owners will likely maintain their commitment to their neighborhood and community. Criteria 5, essential public facilities and services will adequately serve the proposed use or development. The applicant stated 9 years ago when we first proposed this idea, we felt it was needed in the area. Since then, because of our high standards of loving care we give to our clients, our clean facility, ample playtime, and friendly staff, we have outgrown our demand of the community needing us and having to turn them away. Therefore, we have outgrown the maximum of 50 dogs and would appreciate the opportunity to continue to grow and serve more of our community's needs. Staff analysis, an increase in the number of animals on the premise does not impact this criterion. This property is adequately served and equipped for the continued use. Criteria 6, the proposed use or development will not result in unnecessary adverse effects upon any significant natural, scenic, historic features of the subject property or adjacent properties. The applicants responded, we have been in business for over 8 years and thus far have not had any adverse effects on any adjacent properties, including our own. We have never had a complaint in all 8 years. We maintain our property on a regular basis to provide a welcoming environment for our clients. Staff analysis, since the approval of this Board of Adjustment Resolution 318, There does not appear to be any unnecessary adverse impact on specific features of the property. Then there's some other considerations that just involve staff analysis, and the first one is the proposed use or development at the particular location is necessary or desirable to service or facility that is in the public interest or will contribute to the general welfare of the neighborhood or community. As presented in this criterion 2 analysis, this type of economic activity comports with the Woodbury County General Plan and qualifies as a conditional use under section 3.03.4, Land Use Table Summary of Uses in Woodbury County Zoning Ordinance. This business can be construed as providing a service to the community. As recent as March 2009, the American Pet Products Association, a nonprofit association of pet product manufacturers and importers, released an annual industry-wide study spending report indicating that Americans are spending more on pets than ever before, up to $72 billion nationwide. The second consideration is all possible efforts, including building and site design, landscaping, and screening, have been undertaken to minimize any adverse effects on the proposed development. The staff states the Community and Economic Development staff has not identified any major complaints or issues within the office files concerning the Happy Tales operation. It appears the property owners have complied with the original conditions under the original parameters of Board of Adjustment number 318. Therefore, based on the analysis, the staff would support a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment for an approval.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Does anybody have any questions for our clients?
Sounds like you guys got it going. Don't have any complaints. There's been nothing. You did a good job filling out the application.
I only have one question. Do you guys have to add any parking?
What did you say?
Do you have to add any parking?
We may, once the addition, we may go a little bit further
Okay.
down, but we don't have a lot of people coming all at once. It's kind of in and out, they grab their dog real quick and go, so we don't have a lot of issues with parking.
Okay,
We do have space for additional parking.
I figured you did. I used to live in the neighborhood. The previous owner drove me out. No, not really. I knew your dad.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, he taught my oldest daughter,
Okay.
so
That's the way people do here now.
Yeah, this is true.
they do move to Sergeant Bluff.
Yeah, they built a house there.
Yeah. Okay, anybody want to?
Make a motion? I would like to make a motion in the spirit of supporting economic growth of business, an existing business. I'd like to make a motion that we accept this application and allow 80 pets.
That would go to the Board of Adjustments, correct?
Yes, I would come tonight.
Second?
Is there any other language you need on that motion, or is that,
If I may?
Yes.
Okay.
The motion should basically consist of that the zoning commission recommends to the Board of Adjustment to allow the increase of dogs from 50 to 80 on the premises.
what you say? I'll amend my motion.
Okay, I'm good with that. If you guys are okay with that, are we all good with that?
Absolutely.
Aye.
Okay. So with that, is that it for
That would
them?
be it, so that's all for that, so you're welcome to
Yeah.
stay.
you.
Good enough?
Thank you very much. Great.
And just a reminder, a week from today would be the Board of Adjustment meeting at 6 p.m.
Be there. Thank you.
So, what have we got now?
Agenda number 4.
Yeah, okay. Draft flood hazard map update.
Yes.
So what's that?
Yes, our office would like to update the zoning commission on the DNR FEMA draft flood hazard map proposal. And what I would like to do is kind of separate a few things out, because there's kind of, we presented to you a few months ago that there's likely some ordinance changes and adjustments, but there's also the DNR has been working on a project where they've been flying over Iowa and using LiDAR to understand what the floodplain will be in the future based on this 2-foot interval to have a new floodplain, basically. And so we've had a series of meetings that you would see in the packet where DNR has briefed us on where they're at with the proposed flood maps. And there is a draft product available out there that you can look at countywide and see where this new data puts the floodplain. And so what we have done internally, we were asked by DNR and FEMA basically to share it with the departments such as the county engineer and conservation, emergency management, emergency services. So we got together and looked at it, and we didn't see any departmental issues with the proposed map. And so what we mean by that is then we shared our departmental concerns with the DNR, how we felt about the map. And so they're in the process of data collecting, finalizing the data, and with that, they're going to start eventually here in the spring. It's looking like maybe even somewhat December, we'll learn some more information about opening up and starting to present the information and educating the public about the floodplain. And so this is actually about a 2-year process. They gave me a date I'll share with you where they're going to start talking preliminarily on April 3rd, to kind of have a preliminary product out there. There will be a series of public hearings where folks, there will also be an appeal process, because what happened, and you may remember this from years ago when they did 2011, if somebody's in the floodplain, added to the floodplain, then they may likely not so much agree with it and may want to appeal it. So there is a public appeals process which would be involved with that. What we've seen so far with this map is we've seen, of course, there will be some folks added in, but we have seen some significant changes where folks will be removed from that. And to keep this in mind, LOMAs, which we alluded to earlier, LOMAs are the process where somebody has their property and they want to hire a surveyor which will challenge the map. And what I mean by that challenge is they'll survey it and come up with the true elevation and match that elevation against what they call the base flood elevation, which is the whole purpose behind the floodplain. And so when they can verify that with surveyor data, it helps allow FEMA to remove somebody out of that floodplain map. Therefore, if they, for example, come for a building permit to build a large garage or large shed, a house for that matter, having a LOMA would remove you from having the flood insurance, basically, by saying that you're out of the floodplain. So floodplain management is essential. It does affect many people, many citizens across the board. It's either you have the flood insurance, obviously it affects the bottom line and cost for folks. And so that is why this is going to be a kind of a drawn out process. It can go up through, they had mentioned around July of 2021 is where they could probably have an effective draft proposal. An adoption could be anywhere up to January of 2022. So these dates are nothing necessarily in stone, they're fluid, and so we will, of course, monitor the situation and keep each and every one of you and boards briefed on where we're going with this. And when we hear from the DNR about the public meetings, in fact, the DNR is going to probably be taking a lead on this procedure, and we'll, of course, work with them shoulder to shoulder on educating the public. But that's pretty much where we're at with that draft proposal, and we look forward to offering you more information as we move ahead.
So, anybody have any questions?
You know, I mean, I looked at, excuse me, the map a little bit, they're really, other than this is what they've accomplished, you can't really pick anything out of what's in and what's out from,
Yeah,
Okay.
in that map there,
It's-
there is a website link, and I'm trying to see if that's on there, where you could, kind of like the way we use Beacon, it's a GIS-based site that you can go to, plug in Woodbury County, and you'll be able to zoom in. It's kind of like a Google Earth style. You'll be able to zoom in and see where those new flood areas are. And let me see here, if we got that link in the packet, because I will demonstrate for you on the computer here.
There's,
Yes, we do. It's under the September, it's on page 18, under the September 8th or 19th briefing there. So it's that blue website
yeah.
link, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here.
This one right up here on top, isn't it?
Yeah.
I knew I read it somewhere, but I
And
couldn't
you
remember.
want to be real careful putting that into the browser too, to match it. And let's see, Iowa Flood Center.
You don't have it, so you can just click on it somewhere?
I do actually upstairs.
Oh.
There we go. Okay, you will get to this page here. And what you want to do is you'll see basically every county in Iowa, and it's kind of a little tidbit there. You'll see how far along some counties are. When they say effective firm, it means they're much farther along. And you go down to Woodbury County here, it just means we're, the DFHM means we're draft model that we're looking at, so we're not too far along. Let me see if this will let me zoom in. I'll have to use this. But if we zoom in here, it takes a little bit to load, but the blue areas are typically your zone A floodplain. We can see some floodplain that, okay, kind of bigger floodplain area here, kind of southeast of Sergeant Bluff. Now, the true way to really do a comparison at this point is to look at this and switch back and forth for Beacon. We've tried to kind of lay it out in our other meetings and kind of show everybody, but we kind of end up kind of doing the Zoom thing back and forth. And I would recommend kind of, you have the knowledge quite a bit already on where floodplains are. So I would recommend coming in here and actually going to specific properties, specific addresses, kind of zooming in back and forth, and you will see some changes quite a bit based on known areas. So if you want to go to a specific address, you click here, type in the address, and so look at it here and kind of go back and forth with Beacon. And I will go back to Beacon here real quick and show you that we can do a county-wide flood map on Beacon just by simply having the map at the larger level. So if we just hit map once we go out to Beacon instead of search for people, and go down here to the FEMA flood map. This is the adopted one. This is the one we operate off of now. And if that thing's spinning, that means we're waiting. But you'll see kind of here the map. So it will kind of take a matter of zooming in on respective properties. And there's some people that'll be, probably pleased with the results, and some people may not be very pleased at all, as is the nature of when you're doing these adoptions. But if we kind of just look at Grange Township here, just kind of do the flipping back and forth. Again, the true nature is it's so unique to the individual versus just simply laying them out at the county-wide level. And that's why public input and all of those things will definitely matter once we get to the public hearings and everything there. So yeah, I recommend, spending some time just kind of navigating through that and just kind of letting us know as well your opinions on that. But that's the technology side of things.
I know Chris is gonna be really interesting. So I hope she gets a chance to talk to you about it.
Any other questions or concerns on that? So did we cover number 5 also with that?
No.
Okay.
Number 5 is going to take a little bit, and if I may start, I do have handouts I'd like to distribute to you. Let me grab it. Basically, put a paper clip on there. There's multiple documents, and before I kind of get into the details, I'll just briefly show you. The first one on top is our existing floodplain management ordinance, so it's the same as what's in the book for you. The second one is the floodplain management model ordinance, which we'll talk about very briefly here. And the third one is this PowerPoint presentation. And what I did was, we took the existing ordinance, the existing floodplain ordinance, and we put it into a PowerPoint. So you got these two to compare. The old one and the new one, I should say the existing one and the proposed one. And the PowerPoint, basically, if you go through each slide, it'll show you a proposed definition on the PowerPoint. And what that means is that's a definition that's not in the ordinance, that the new ordinance it's a proposal to add in. And so where you see the terminology proposed definitions, those will be added. But moving throughout the PowerPoint, you will see some language in there. It says existing definition. The next slide would say proposed revised definition. Now, based on what I just said there, I'm going to go back a few months ago, and we had mentioned to the board that the Iowa DNR has adopted this floodplain model ordinance as an update, and many counties, jurisdictions, statewide have adopted it. And our floodplain ordinance was adopted in 2008 when the whole zoning ordinance was put into place. And kind of in a nutshell, what this new proposed language does is it adopts, basically removes the conditional use requirement where, for example, somebody comes in and they want to build a garage and they're expected to, for example, follow the ordinance and provide fill, go to the DNR, be DNR regulated to get the base flood elevation level, come back to the office, go through the building permit process. And so by virtue of filing a building permit and following through with the floodplain regulations, many counties that have adopted this have basically put it into the administrative versus the conditional use. And what that means is it's kind of making it a little bit easier for a landowner, or taking a little bit of that off on the conditional use. However, the DNR retains their level of regulation. They look at, when somebody goes down there for a base flood elevation, they look at the scenario. And we usually get a letter from the DNR that tells us that they're either going to permit something or they're not going to permit something, and then they turn it back over to the local jurisdictions. And so they have what you call variance language in here as well. So a variance, as you know, like with the Board of Adjustment, is much more extreme in nature than a conditional use. And so what they're getting at here is they found since the 2008 language, which they probably adopted before 2008, they found that the things that have been listed as conditional use have been a little bit I would say, extra steps in there is kind of the language when I talked to Bill Cappuccio, the DNR representative from them. And so, kind of the key point is the conditional use language would be the major change there. I will clarify that when something is, let's say, a variance level, they gotta get DNR approval before the county can even consider a variance. And so the variance language would stay in place on that. So kind of in a nutshell, the short elevator speech is that this proposed model has been approved by the DNR. It's the language that they turn over to counties and local jurisdictions, and they say, consider adopting this. The big language that they only really give us flexibility on is, do we want to make it more strict in terms of elevation? In other words, if you want to build a house in a floodplain and you go get the BFE, you could say, okay, you got to be 2 feet over the BFE or 3 feet over the BFE, but the standard is 1 foot. And I think kind of the misperception we run into sometimes is the base flood elevation level. You got to consider where that truly is. If somebody has to elevate above the BFE 1 foot, depending on where the BFE is, mathematically, they may end up having to have 4 feet of fill or 3 feet of fill. It just kind of depends on that level of situation. But the language that has been presented to you has been fully vetted by the DNR. And so what would happen is if we consider to adopt this and bring it toward public hearing, and the board, let's say, makes a change to something like the feet or whatever, the DNR has to go back and vet it again. And so we have their language to begin with, but this is something that they're right there with us. And we have oversight, basically, in that regard. And so I guess what the reason that agenda item is on there is we'd like to get a sense of how the zoning commission feels, because you have the authority, if you want to initiate this process, we could consider having a public hearing and look at adopting this in complement to what's going to be going on in the future with the floodplain map. But David and I have both talked, and would like to ask the board if you'd be interested in bringing this up to maybe a January 27th, maybe public hearing. The reason is the zoning commission can technically trigger this to start by having that public hearing. And then the board of supervisors, after this commission would make some type of recommendation, then the board of supervisors would have to take it up and fully focus in on it on public hearings there. And so by the way the ordinance is written, this board can go ahead and initiate it if the board sees fit.
Because FEMA's already, you're basically going with their ideas, so they're happy with that. So there's nothing here that really has to be adjusted one way or the other, because everybody's happy because of using their recommendations to begin with.
Yeah, and the nice part is it helps counties understand what is meeting the state regulations and also giving the county the regulations. And just straightforward, and we give you both languages, and hopefully you can see this one here as sort of a key to help you decipher, kind of doing it. If you do a straight read on both, the whole goal is to kind of read here and see, oh, this is how they made the change here. This is how they made the change here. And the conditional use thing, and Bill Cappuccio, if it's the will of the board to have a public hearing in January, Bill Cappuccio with the DNR arranged to have him possibly offer a further explanation, or another time as well offer more details about it. But just to be clear, this language was directly handed over to us by the DNR. It's an accepted form that they find to be the most effective, or I should say latest and greatest, in terms of administering the floodplain ordinance in a way that's manageable for property owners, etc. So,
Well, what date are we truly looking at trying to get something implemented?
What we've seen and when we've talked with DNR, I've talked with David, and the idea would be possibly this spring, maybe in the early winter months. If we were to take it up on the January 27th, we could send it over to the Board of Supervisors, and it would be public notice, and the supervisors would consider that at their public hearings. And the way the code is written, the Iowa Code, the Board of Supervisors could have up to 3 public hearings on that, or they can have 2. It just depends on the will of the Board of Supervisors on how they would want to handle it. But this board can trigger it by having a public hearing, having a meeting to really discuss the language. So what David and I discussed was sort of turning over the materials here and ask for you to consider reviewing it, looking through it in great detail, and if it's your will to have that public hearing on January 27th, and everybody kind of become equipped with some ideas in general on how you feel about this in terms of regulating the floodplain for all the property stakeholders. And again, this here is kind of fits with the whole mapping coming up too. So it's kind of like, I know it's a multi-year process, but let's say we get this adopted, this ordinance would actually link up to the existing map, not the new map, because the language of the ordinance actually reflects the flood map. In other words, anywhere you see that blue on the screen, this governs that. And so this one would match our existing. So let's say we get the new maps adopted in 2022, we'd come back to the zoning commission and ask you, we need a really little minor update. We need you to consider amending the map label. It really comes down to that. It's a specific language there. But this is, again, it's up to the board to consider having that January 27th, moving forward on that.
Well, thank you for doing this part of it. That'll be real helpful when we go through and read this. I also agree that Bill would be really helpful to have at a meeting. He's so intelligent on this stuff. Kind of would like to have the full board here before we make any.
That was, yeah, that was my only thought too, with us being short. Or do you think we'll have a December meeting, or if not, the next time we'll all see each other would be January, with a February?
It's depending on what happens through Wednesday this week.
Sure.
It's likely we'll not have the December meeting, and that because typically the agenda item, somebody presents a application to us, we ask it for the first of the month, so that we're able to have the opportunity to collect all the information that you need to make the decisions and everything.
But if we wanted to discuss just this.
But you're more than welcome to, if you want to consider having a meeting. It is December 23rd, and so we know folks' schedules can be quite challenging there. And I don't recall if we had one then last December a year ago or not, but
I don't remember either.
But again, it is up to the board in that regard. But what we saw was, and again, a full board, probably definitely important, so.
Well, December's gonna be a tough month to get everybody together with it being on the 23rd, but
So if we schedule for the 27th, it's not saying anything set in stone. We're going to be discussing it and possibly send it to the board of supervisors.
I guess if we're just here to discuss it, if we can't have a full board, don't have a meeting.
Yeah, I'm just thinking January would probably realistically be the time we have this discussion, and hopefully everybody's had a chance to pre-read it, and February would be the public hearing, if that's where everybody gives the nod to.
There you go.
Just so I'm not
Okay,
trying to.
that's fine. But I was reading into it that you wanted to have this for a public hearing in January instead of February.
Yeah, I don't think our board personally would be ready. I think we.
No.
Again, the nature of fully understanding there's 3 here tonight and kind of going into it, attendance does affect that. So.
I don't have a problem with Doing it in January then. I'm okay with that.
In terms of a full public hearing, or in terms of having a public hearing in February?
I prefer the public hearing in February.
Yes,
Okay.
just that we'll probably get together and,
In that case too, if I may ask permission to chair to jump into item number 6, because I think they kind
Sure.
of play off of each other. Item number 6 is also a couple ordinance changes, and what we're doing is, you might recall, we worked on a subdivision last year when we were discussing frontage a bit and access, about how wide the driveway could be and the easement, and we were basically looking at section 3.04, access and frontage. And basically this language here on page 23 of your packet was something that we really focused quite a bit on subdivision. And so what we did was we worked with the county engineer, Mark Nara, and asked him, because this plays such a big role with the road system and access, to see what he would think would be some good language to offer clarity, to offer effective access. And so what we did was we provided some proposed language there that sort of highlights and amplifies what that section is about, where it would say any one lot, in this regards subdividing and just having access, any one lot used for residential purposes shall have a minimum frontage of 40 feet. You'll notice the number change from above. On a public road or an exclusive private access easement of at least 40 feet in width to a public road. 2 residential lots with a shared driveway must include a private access easement of at least 20 feet in width on either side of a lot line adjacent to a public road, which provides a 40-foot wide total frontage for shared access driveway. 3 or more lots with a shared driveway must include private access easement of at least 66 feet. Now, Mark put that number in there as a larger, I know he's looking through that whole SUDAS requirement where the cities have that for putting the road in. He finds that 66 feet, he stated here, I would rather see multiple lot access be at 66 feet rather than 60 feet. At 66 feet is the statutory width for a secondary road. And so basically, I know the board discussed this a bit last year. I remember Bruce and Tom were quite a bit talking about the language there, and so we did ask Mark to present this as language. So basically, again, to shorten up the story here, we're presenting this to the board as consideration to adopt, to amend the ordinance based on Mark's language there to offer clarity. And so again, kind of packaged with the flood and some of these kind of items, we're seeing these as opportunities to kind of fix some of these things that we've seen kind of pop up here. And so that's the reasoning to again ask the board to consider making this ordinance change as well.
And this one will take a public hearing also then?
It would be the same process as a flood, and so that's why we're kind of trying to
kind of
consolidate.
put them all together.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And then the next one, under the same agenda item, telecommunication towers. You might remember, I think last April or May, the zoning commission looked into that tower that went in down by Sloan for US Cellular. And one of the things we briefed the board about was the ordinance was adopted in 2008, but Iowa code and Iowa law has changed significantly in the telecommunications industry, and they have Iowa Code 8C. And what this Iowa Code 8C did was it basically put a shot clock on the length of time to approve a permit or approve a tower permit to a set amount of time. It's around I'd have to look it up specifically, but it's around 100 or so day, if not 90-day type of framework. Again, I'd have to get that specific number, so don't hold that number in stone. But the other part was that our ordinance talks about what you call forced co-location. In other words, where a telecommunication company in the past would have to go and basically communicate with everybody who had a piece of property or a tower asset within range of where they're going to build one. But what happened was Iowa law removed that authority of the locals. And so we don't have that ability to regulate. We don't have that ability to force anybody to co-locate. And so basically, this is a housekeeping matter to remove that language out of the ordinance to keep us from that conflict.
So you're saying they don't have to go to these people and say, hey, we're gonna do this, are you okay with it? They can just put it there.
They basically can file for a permit, just like somebody would with a structure, come to this board because of it still being a conditional use, that's fine. But we're basically looking at installing it there, making sure it meets the setback requirements, the fall zone requirements, the very basic requirements, but we don't have any other regulatory options other than that. And so the proposed language here is basically to remove actually we're pointing out that we need to add in there in accordance with Iowa code. So we want to refer back to the state law. Then we're also proposing to say here an affidavit that provides an explanation regarding the reason. This is from Iowa code, an excerpt. Providing a reason for choosing the proposed location and the reason the application did not choose. We can't force somebody to, but we can have them tell us, why are you building it there? You know, it's just kind of that question, why is it there?
Oh.
And so an affidavit that provides an explanation regarding the reason for choosing the proposed location and the reason the applicant did not choose the co-location. So they can co-locate if they want to. So it's up to them, but the governing body, basically we can't force.
But if there's already a Verizon tower here and AT&T wants to get on that tower, that still has nothing to do with us. We're just talking about physically building the first tower.
We're talking about the tower development, that constructing the
But
structure.
who hangs something on it's still not our.
Yeah, the company just have those lease agreements and situations where they will allow somebody so much real estate to put their device on the tower. Then they can get permitted for having a device attached onto the tower. But the conditional use permit, which comes before this commission, is for the erection of the new structure.
Okay.
Tower structure.
Okay.
And so basically, again, Dave and I were looking at, we've got, these few items here to address, and kind of earlier in the year, it might be kind of maybe a reasonable idea for the board to consider taking up some of these
Okay.
things here early on.
So I guess throw them all together like it, as we stated prior to that.
So I guess at this point, does the board kind of have a general, you're looking for, I guess officially for the minutes, are you looking for maybe February then?
Do you want a motion on that?
Well, I think basically it would just kind of take, I think probably if you're looking at the February, you'll likely have a conversation as a board, probably at the next meeting, at the next month. And
I think we all agree that January is a good discussion month and
Yeah.
February is more.
Yep.
more positive.
and also, again, we call meetings when we have agenda items and everything. So I guess if you will, regardless if there is an agenda item or not an agenda item, you want to put it in stone that we are indeed meeting in February or January.
Yes.
Yes.
And if for some reason, I guess in December, and we got us all here, and we can review it at that time, and we'll save it from happening in January, then that's fine too.
Yeah, and again, I know there's 3 here tonight, but again, December is one of those type of months. But
Yep.
if you wanted to meet, I guess that's your
No,
prerogative.
I want to do it in January for right now, but what I'm saying is if something comes up that you've got an agenda that we have to be here, in December and everybody's here, we could maybe try and save us from having it in January.
And if something comes in at a certain time too, before Wednesday, then we can call around and see,
Okay.
kind of gauge you all for how December would work.
Okay. Any other comments then on that? Is that everything?
That would be, unless you want to move to number 7.
Well, number 6 doesn't look like anybody's here to be heard, so the commissioner's comments or inquiry, what do you got?
Anybody have any questions of the staff?
Just one quick ask if I could. This PowerPoint that's in here, is it possible to get that in our email?
Yes, in fact, I handed that out to you for, reading material, but we'll get you the computerized digital big screen version.
Okay. Sorry, I know you do contacts, but
Definitely, yeah. Thank you for asking.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay. I guess with that, are we all ready to adjourn this meeting?
Yes, we are. Would you like a motion to adjourn?
Yes,
I will-
please.
I will place that on the table for you.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.